Hi guys, welcome back. So as you can see, I lined the trunk up with the car, laid everything in where it needs to be. That way I can get some measurements and find out exactly where I need to lay the trunk hinges. And I'll be tightening up some stuff on the car, doing some little things. So here we have the front clip for the Vaydor, and as you can see here, there's some red stuff. I forgot to film the first part of me doing it, but there were a ton of little pinholes and everything just from the molds and the fiberglass and everything. And I got some glazing and spot putty and started filling it in. I obviously missed a few of them, so I have to go back. And you normally wouldn't use glazing putty before you do Bondo. This is normally just to get out the small imperfections, but these were very shallow, so it wasn't that much product. I know it looks like a big section, but it's not that deep. It's just kind of on the surface, and it's filling in a lot of those tiny imperfections, which most of it doesn't have, but this section for some reason just had a good bit more. So I'm going to finish filling those in, take some sandpaper, sand it smooth, and then prime over it just to see how smooth the surface is actually. The method I use is you put a glob of it on your Bondo spreader, you find the pinholes, you lay it on, and then you take the majority of it back off, just so it fills in only the holes. I'm sure you could find a much more detailed video of this somewhere on YouTube. There's bound to be hundreds of them, but that's basically what I do, and then let that dry, come back, sand it all down, and then fill in the rest of the spots. Just keep going until you get a perfectly smooth finish. Alright, so it's been a couple days since I laid this on. You really don't need to let it sit that long. Normally a couple hours is just fine, but I had stuff to do, so I wasn't here. And now all you do is you take a sanding block. This one's just a fine grit. I think it's 600, not exactly sure, but it works pretty good for this glazing putty stuff. You just lightly sand over it and let the grit of the sandpaper do the work. Don't push into it because then you're just going to get gouges. So I'm going to sand this all up. It's kind of hard to do with one hand on the camera, so I'm going to do that off camera and then show you guys how it looks. Okay, so about 30 seconds later, it's down to where it needs to be. That stuff sands off really easily, which is one of the reasons why I like it if there's little spots like this instead of Bondo. Bondo's a little bit harder to sand. One difference when sanding this instead of Bondo is you don't feather it in like you would normally if you're just doing a normal Bondo job. With this stuff, you fill in the little holes and you take off everything that is not in those holes. So as you can see, the hole is filled in, and right next to it is the level surface of how the body is actually going to lay. So just kind of clean it all off. Obviously before you paint you want to actually prep it the way you're supposed to, but for now I'm just taking the dust off. I'm going to go around and do that on some other little spots of the car, show you how they turn out, but I'm not going to do a ton of it now. I'm just going to get some of the bigger ones. So I'll show you that right now. Okay, so here's another example of where you would use the glazing putty. As you can see, compared to my finger, there are very small scratches and little divots. And all you do, same process as the other, put a coat on, take it all off, and then sand it smooth. And it just fills in those little imperfections. Normally you would be doing this when you're getting closer to paint after you've done all the body work, but I just wanted to fill in a couple more of the little obvious ones because I dropped a few of these pieces like here, and I want to get them while I remember they're there. I'm going to go back, obviously, when I'm done and do the body work on the rest of the car, but if I make a new scratch, I'm going to try to fix it as I go, just so I don't forget about it or miss over it. Alright guys, so we're back at the front of the car, and I have a little bit of sort of bad news. It's not terrible, but I was talking to Jimmy, who worked at Vaydor, and he was telling me that the way I was setting up the front core support was incorrect. Originally, I was bolting it into these two studs, which were bolted into the original front frame rail, not frame rail, front bash bar, and apparently that's wrong. I have to take off this plate all the way, and then I also have to cut all the way along here, cut out the headlight buckets, and then the core support bolts into these bolts on either side of that original support bar. So that comes out, and then I have to shave down some of these fiberglass tabs, do that on both sides, and then I can get the core support to sit up correctly in the right position so I can get the headlights right. If I ended up going the way I was and just left all of that in there, once I got the core support in, it would have been about 4 inches too far forward, since this is about 4 inches. And when I tried to when I would have tried to install the front clip, I would have been way too far forward. I couldn't get the doors. I wouldn't be able to get the doors to line up. I wouldn't be able to get the hood to line up. There'd be a big gap up front. And basically, it would have just been a nightmare. I would have had to come back, figure out what was wrong, take stuff apart. So I'm really glad that he messaged me and let me know about this now. That way I can get it fixed, get it done right, and get it all together the way it should be. So I'm going to go figure out exactly where I need to cut. I'm going to cut all of that, take off these supports, and get it matched up the way it should be. Alright, so we got these front frame rail sections off, and now I have to cut out the headlight brackets. First I have to cut this zip tie that's holding in the harness. I'm going to throw that just in there so it's not in the way. Then I tape the lines that I need to cut across, and I'm just going to get the Dremel, maybe a hacksaw, and cut those off, get this entire bracket out of there, and then that section will be clear. And then I have to come over here and get down and chop these parts that stick out. I have to shave all of those down so it's nice and flush so I can mount the front core support. So there we go. We have the first side cut right off. I just used a basic hand hacksaw. It was actually really easy to cut off. A little hard to maneuver down here for this area, but not really too hard at all. Worked out. I still have to cut off the other side. I might have to figure out another solution for the wiper fluid reservoir. Right now I have it unbolted from the original core support because I'm cutting this off here as well, and I'm actually kind of surprised I never noticed before, but this was actually broken from the small accident the car was in, but I'm chopping it off so it really doesn't matter. Anyways, back to the reservoir. It's bolted on to the rest of the core support here and here, so it's still in there. I unbolted it from here, and as you can see, it's not really going anywhere. It's not really solid, but for now, I'm just going to leave it like that. I might have to figure out another solution for that. Maybe a smaller tank, move it further back or something. There's a good bit of room there, but once again, you have the tire there, so I don't know. I'll have to turn the wheel, see how much clearance I have find out a solution for the fluid tank. And I am keeping wipers on this car. I haven't figured out a solution exactly, but I'll show you what I end up doing for that. But this car will have wipers because in Pittsburgh you kind of need them. Next, I'll be undoing all of these zip ties holding in wires and everything. That way I can cut this off. And I didn't film a time lapse because it's basically the same as the other side, but I got this all out. I left it a little bit further out here because I'm going to have to go in here with the Dremel because this filler neck's kind of in the way for the hacksaw to get back there. Next, I'm going to be chopping these straight up, lined up with the rest of this straight line. So it's basically just going to follow this line all the way up and make this flush. I'm going to do that on both sides, as you can see it there. That way it is flush and you have room for the front core support. Okay, there we go. Both sides are cut flush with that bottom piece. So I'm not sure if that reservoir is going to be in the way, but next video I'm going to test fit that. I don't have time right now. I have some other little things to do, and I have just not enough time to get it all done. It's pretty late already, so I'm going to try to do what I can, a couple more little things. So right now I'm going to come to these tabs that are sticking out. They were helping to hold on those metal supports here for the front crash bar. Since that is off, these need to go so we can sit the new core support flat onto this. So once again, just going to get the hacksaw, maybe use the Dremel this time since they're a little bit smaller, harder to get to. But got to get them off on that side. There are a couple little ones here and tabs there and stuff. So I'm just going to knock that all down, flatten it all up, and then probably won't get to the actual core support installation in this video, but it should be coming soon. I just wanted to get this out of the way since it's kind of important for the car, and that's it. One more thing, I started just to very, very roughly and kind of mock up some of the interior panels. This is where the seat will be, and then you have this panel for the side window comes to that centerpiece between the seats, and the headliner is not really installed. It's just kind of, as you can see, clamped in there, and it's not lined up at all. It's way too far forward, and the back's just kind of hanging in there off some tape. So it goes up way more than it is right now, but I just kind of wanted to mock it up so I could give myself a view of kind of how it's going to look. But obviously I still have a lot of work to go. None of these are wrapped, but I just kind of want to test fit them in there, make sure I know where they go exactly, and yeah. Okay, and I know in the last video I said that I was going to be installing the trunk hinges, but since I found out about the front core support and how I installed that incorrectly, I wanted to focus on that first and get that sorted out before I focus on some of the little things like the hinges and lining other panels up. I wanted to make sure that I got some of the bigger things set up first and done correctly. So I did not get the trunk hinges on. As you can see, it just is loosely in there. But I'm hoping to get it done this weekend, at least temporarily, so I can start to get things to work. But for now, it's not in there, and I don't have time to do it in this video. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next one.